In one of my videos I pointed out that the job of us minarchists is to create a society that works in reality. The job of anarcho-capitalists and other anarchists is to lay the philosophical groundwork, to think about how it could be. We don't expect them to point out a plan, how it really works. It's more about the basics, it's more about the philosophy, and that's a good thing. That's a good split of work, and we both have to do our parts. And I think I stumbled over a solution of one of the questions that I stated to the anarchists and never got an answer to it. But before we go on, we have to clarify 3 points. The first point is that as long as there are states, you need a state to defend against the state. I pointed this out in a previous video. It pretty much boils down that if a state attacks a group that is not a state but voluntarily organized, the defense is voluntary. And the attacker uses people to attack who don't do that voluntarily. That means they pretty often have more people, they might have a higher degree of organization, and so on and so on. So the state has on the attack a benefit, and he's also better in defense because organization and concentration of power, concentration of money, and so on. I have not seen that really good refuted till now. Often the people say, oh no, people might have tanks. Yeah, but they are not forced to use it. If you live in the south, you're not forced to defend the north, because you say, I don't care about the north. When you come down to the south or the west or whatever, I will take out my tank. But before that, why should I do that? On the other hand, the army has no saying in that. The leader says attack, and they have to attack. So as long there are states, organized, highly organized states, you will have to have a state of some sorts. And here comes minarchism into place. And minarchism says, okay, that's the job of the state. Defend us against other states. But let's go further. The second point there is, if you want change, you have two possibilities. Let's say we want to boil this frog. You can throw boiling water over him and he will jump out of the glass. Or you do it slowly, very slowly. You turn up the heat and wait. And the funny thing with frogs is it works. You could kill a frog in this manner just by turning on the heat slow and very slow, so that he has time to adjust, and in the end will not be a frog in the end, but frog soup, which is the state you want him to be, and he will not apply force to defend against that. So if you apply change slowly, which means evolutionary instead of revolutionary, you have a higher chance of succeeding. It takes time, it takes an awful lot of time, but your chances to get what you really wanted are higher. So the next thing is, if you want to do that and you say, we are here on the red bar and we want to go over to the black bar because this is where we want to be, we have to go, if we want not a revolution, we have to go over the blue. And that's the thing, we are right now in a more socialistic system. I mean, 50% of the GDP of Austria is spent by the Austrian state, so 50% of the power is with the state. That's quite socialistic. The ANCAPs want 0% for the state. The minarchist says, okay, he needs some power. Let's around 10%, 5%, something like that. So following the logic we pointed out right now, and you want to go slow, you don't want a revolution, you don't want to force the good on the people, you have to go from the red over the blue to the black. Which means, in our terms, from socialism, or statism, or etatism, or whatever you want to call it, over minarchism to anarcho-capitalism, or anarchism, whatever sort of anarchism you want. The thing is, right now, anarchists show quite a hostility to minarchists because they see them as statists, and we are. I mean, we say, yeah, we need a state, although we say we need a state for exactly one thing, and it is defending against other states. And if all states are down to that point and say, okay, we just need us to defend against other states, nobody has money for attacking anymore, it will go away. So the end goal of minarchism is anarchism, pretty much. But Right now there is this feeling to say, no, if you want 1% taxes, you're a statist and you're wrong because we hold the moral high ground. Yes, you do. Absolutely, you hold the moral high ground. Taxation is theft. Yes, I agree. I am surprised that I agree. But you have to have it for the reason I pointed out, mainly to defend against other states. So the thing is, it would be in the interest of anarchists to help the minarchists to get a minarchism and go then further. I said that repeatedly, and I know it sounds like one of these discs with a crack, but that's the thing. We have to go to minarchism first. And the thing is that I think anarchists are a bit in a panic that people might like that a little bit too much and don't want to go further. And I think they are right, because I would want to stay there. But I'm not if you destroy minarchism and say no, minarchism is no option, I don't become a full-blown anarchist. That's the thing. It's more likely that I stick with etatism to a degree and just say, okay, we need less state, and to whatever degree. And here my argument of today comes in. How do you get from minarchism, where you have only a little bit of state, to full-blown anarchism? And I would say it could work with a voluntary society. And I stumbled over one of the things I knew from my past, but don't give it a thought for quite some time. And this was in the First World War, when Austria pretty much went out of money and had no money anymore, and there was no chance to tax the people anymore. They started an action, and this action was Ich gab Gold für Eisen, which means I gave gold for iron, which meant in essence that the state produced these nice things, rings and coins and so on. And what's up there is I paid the state a lot of money and they gave me nothing back, instead of this token that states I gave something to the state. That's all. And the interesting thing is, if you go to from a complete capitalist notion to this thing, you say, why should I? I mean, the deal is something of, I give $100 and get something back that is worth half a buck or something like that, or perhaps more in the future. In the case of these things, it's way more in the future because they are rare and they are not quite cheap anymore. But at the point we're talking about in the First World War, when people were quite interested to because they did not know how the value of their money will change, and if you know what happened in the 20s and 30s, you know it changed drastically and not to the better. So keeping gold would have been a good idea. But people gave the gold to the state, got more or less nothing in return but a token. But this token was linked to an idea and was linked to prestige. People wore these rings. People who used to wear a gold ring wore then this iron ring, that stated, I gave my gold to the state to help the state to survive, which didn't work because the state did not survive. But the thing is, there is an amount of peer pressure to do something like that, to say, do your part. And this is one of the do your part things. But if you can't afford it, because you did not have the money, nobody would blame you. Nobody would go and say, okay, you have to take on a loan so that you can buy one of these rings. It's a prestige thing. It's you change the prestige object gold into a prestige object that says, I gave my gold to do something with that. And I think this could be the way from minarchism to full-blown anarchism. If you say at some point, okay, the taxation is very, very low, and now we start to make half of this of the money we need by voluntary choice. So we have a standard of 10% taxes, and now go to 5% taxes, and the rest has to be brought in by voluntary action, such as this. You would then perhaps get a plate you pin on your house that states, I gave so-and-so for the state. For these rings, for instance, the ring that is pointed over there on the right, that's the cheap one. That's the one that was affordable for everyone. But there were also ones iron with inlaid gold and so on. So you had an idea how much the people gave away to get this token, and they became increasingly expensive. And there are some of these very, very, very expensive ones are right now almost not. You can't get them. It's not really easy to get them. So funnily enough, they did raise above their buying value after 100 years. But the thing is, you could then pin on your house, I gave 1,000 euros, 3,000, 10,000, 100,000 for the state, for our security. And what does this mean? So you could go slowly away from complete taxation and still have your mandatory payments. Why mandatory? Because, and this is one thing that I discussed with anarchists over and over and over again, and say, okay, how do you do this with security? I agree for this in this moment. A private army works, a private security works better than police and so on. No problem with that. It's more cost efficient. I give you that. Who pays it? I mean, do I pay the policeman when I need him? It doesn't work like that. I mean, when you say, okay, in the case of a robbery and the policeman comes, he gives me a bill and I pay the bill. It doesn't work like that. You have to pay for security all the time, because the job of security is that you don't need them, which makes the payment mandatory in a sense that if you live in, let's say, a gated community, and call this little gated community a anarcho-capitalist gated community, they will have a security, and everyone has to pay for the security and for the security firm. And when one says, yeah, but we are a voluntary society and I don't want to pay for them because I think they are fascists too, so blah blah blah, something like that, the community will have to say, but you can't live then here. You have to pay that. You have to do your part. That's important. You can't. And then he will say, but that's not voluntary, and that's taxation, and that's the beginning of a state, and he will be right. I work around that, and this is something the anarchists should have said to me in essence, because it's one of the things that refuse a lot of my arguments, is make it voluntary. You can say, okay, you get a shield and point out, I paid for this mandatory thing and I did my part, and let social pressure do the rest. You will have a problem then, because if criminality, for instance, let's stick with the police or the security or something like that. If criminality drops and there is no case of theft or murder and something like that, people will say, okay, we have no problem anymore. Let's reduce that. And people will reduce the payment to the state, if voluntary, and go below and lower and lower and lower and lower. The police will start to tighten up and be more efficient to compensate for that they don't have more money. But there is a point. You can slimming, but you're on the bones. You can't go below that anymore. And then you have too little security, and criminality has a chance again and will raise. And when criminality raises, people will start to spend more money voluntarily for the security company. So you will have an equilibrium that is somewhere at low criminality. You don't get no criminality. You only get no criminality in a police state. And you have, but the side effects are not so nice. But this could work. This is one of the things that could work, but we can't apply that right now. You can't say, okay, the state needs right now 50% of your money, you can give him voluntarily 50% of your money. It won't work. But in a range of 5%, I think people would say, okay, it's a project. It's a product, and I understand the product. It's like It's like having firefighters who come to my place and check if I'm secure and my house wouldn't burn, so that he will never have to come again. This is something that people could buy, but you have to give them some token for it so that they can show off. It's pretty much showing off. I think that in an anarchistic capitalistic society, reputation will have a lot of weight. I think that if you have a business and this business don't have this placard on it, people will say, you don't do your part. I don't make business with you because you don't do your part. And bringing people to, I mean, there will be some. Some will say, I don't buy in shops that do their part because they are statists and evil, and I'm an anarchist and I don't want that. But that's okay. That's the next step. When you have when you see that the need for the state is vanishing. And this can only happen if there is all other states go to the same place. If you have Komistan next door with 100% taxes and an army that just waits that you cut your defense spending, it won't work. But if all the nations, because we are all evolving above blah blah blah, and we are on an IQ level of 200 on the whole world, it will diminish. It will go away. But that's the next step. That's the step when people say, I don't buy at companies that do their part because they are statists, and I don't want that. It forces our neighbors to have a state too, and I don't want that. So you use the same pressure, the same peer pressure that is used before in the start of this shifting from minarchism to anarchism, that is used to make the people pay the taxes, to then make them not pay the taxes. That's the elegance. You don't use another vehicle. It's the same with the frog. You use the temperature in the first step to make him accommodate to the new temperature, and the second step you use it to kill him. But you don't change the nature of it. It's still heat, and in this case it's still peer pressure. And I think that's quite elegant and quite interesting. And again, I have to underline, we are not there. You can't use this right now. We have to go to minarchism first before we can even think about doing something like this in the real world. And that's the reason why I want to point out that minarchism and anarchism, we are not enemies. And there is absolutely no sense of fighting each other. We are different milestones on a road. If you want to go to your milestone, you have to go over mine. That's important. You have to go over mine. So it is in your interest to help me to get to my milestone, and it is in my interest to help you to get to mine milestone. And once we are there, I'm the guy who steps on the brakes and say, okay, I stay there, but you can try to go on. And I will try to hinder you, perhaps, in the first step, because the main reason I am a minarchist is I think that most people need leadership because they are too stupid to get their own affairs met. But I might change my opinion if people change, and if my observation of people say, no, they are now clever enough. Although I think it will take some centuries of liberty to accommodate the people for real liberty. I mean, right now they are not fit for it. They don't even like it to the most place. So yeah, I think this is lengthy enough. What do you think about it? Let me know. Like, share, subscribe, make a response video and let us talk, and have a great time.